Hey, what's going on YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here. I'm back again for another video, and lately I have been on an Xbox 360 kick, and every time I go back and play the Xbox 360, it makes me wonder what happened to the Xbox One. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Xbox One is a cool system, but I mean, the Xbox 360 killed it back in its day. I mean, it had fantastic third-party support, and when it came to playing third-party games, they usually played better on the Xbox 360 from a performance standpoint. And just the multiplayer experience, even though the PlayStation 3's multiplayer was free, the multiplayer experience for me on the Xbox was where it was at, whether I was playing either, Halo or the Call of Duty games or GTA, whatever the case. But one thing and one aspect about the Xbox 360 that I don't think a lot of people talk about is the Xbox 360 also had some kick-ass exclusives on the system. So in this video, I've dragged 5 down from the shelf, and we're going to talk about Xbox 360 exclusives. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so real quick disclaimer before we begin. Yes, I know a lot of the games that I'm about to talk about also came out on the Windows, on the computer via Steam or whatever service. When I mean exclusives, I'm really just talking about console exclusives, so spare me in the comments all of that. Oh, this came out on Windows, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, moving on to the first game. This one is brought to us by the good folks at Arc System Works, and the first title I want to talk about is Guilty Gear Overture. And this game is interesting for a couple of reasons. This, I remember when it came out, it caused a lot of flack when the game first came out, mainly because this game was the direct sequel to Guilty Gear on the PlayStation. And there were a couple of, whether it was Guilty Gear X or XX Accent Core or whatever, all the, the weird in-betweens they had between Guilty Gear on the PlayStation and then this game. The thing about it is this game is not a fighting game at all. So the Guilty Gear series, you know it as the side-scrolling 2D fighting game with an awesome soundtrack, awesome animation, all of that good stuff. They ditched all of that, and instead of getting a side-scrolling 2D action game, you are getting this kind of weird, first of all, they're using polygon graphics, so it's all 3D. It's kind of this weird mix between like a Dynasty Warriors game and kind of like a tower defense game and also like a strategy game. So you play this game as Soul Bad Guy. You can also play as Sin and some other characters later on, but it's basically they're bounty hunters just kind of traveling around the land. They get attacked by these magical assailants, and then the cause of all this, this new wave of demonic possession across the land, whatever, yada, yada, yada. There's a kingdom in trouble. You got to save the king, all that good stuff. Basically, your objective is to beat the bad guy, send all the demons back to hell or whatever the case is. So in this game, when you play through the missions, you will have kind of these towers that you have to, these beacons that you have to defend. As you go through the levels, you will take territory from other enemies, and then you can kind of change their beacon to your beacon and all of that sort of thing. So that whole element is there. As you defeat enemies and complete objectives, you will get mana, which you can then use to purchase more soldier units that you can use to fight alongside you. But I mean, again, it's more of like a Dynasty Warriors game, so you're taking like a direct part of the action, which is good. The action itself is your standard kind of hack and slash affair. So Bad Guy's got a couple of combos and a couple of special moves that he can bust out. The combat system isn't as deep as in some hack and slash games I play, but I think it's okay. It's pretty much the same across the board for every character that you unlock and play as too. So I thought that was pretty cool in the sense that, once I figured out the best combos for the situation with Soul Bad Guy, it was cool unlocking other characters. And okay, let me see what combos they try out. A lot of the combos you will recognize from the 2D fighting game. So I thought that was pretty cool too. They had those nods in there. It's got a fantastic rocking soundtrack. Again, when this game came out, it got a lot of flack, but I think that you can enjoy it more now in the sense that there's plenty of 2D fighting games in the Guilty Gear series. There was a bunch that came out before Overture, and there were tons that came out in the years after Overture. So in this sense, I applaud Arc System Works for actually trying to shake it up and do something new. All of their games are great in the Guilty Gear series, but with the exception of Guilty Gear Judgment, which I reviewed a few months back, all the fighting games, they after a while, they kind of start to get samey in a lot of aspects. And so this was a nice shakeup. And again, I applaud them for just trying something new. And we don't really see that with creators nowadays in video games. I feel like especially the big budget creators that kind of do the safe bet and just kind of give everybody, the kind of same recycled ideas. And so it was nice of them to think outside the box. Last I checked, this game was pretty cheap. You can still grab it for under $20. This game has been flying under the radar for years. I purchased my copy for $2.69. I don't know if you can see that, but $2.69 is what I paid for that game. And yeah, it was definitely worth it. I definitely got my money's worth. So if you're out and about and see this game, definitely pick it up. Next game on the list, this one is brought to us by Microsoft themselves. I think this was a launch game, or it was at least definitely a very early game. It was one of the first titles I played on the 360 when I was kind of searching for new IPs to dive into. And this one here, 99 Nights is the name of it. I remember playing this game back in the day. This is actually another Dynasty Warriors clone, and it was different enough, I think, to kind of give it its own kind of flavor. In this, you play as one of several different characters. You'll start off with, I think, Enfi is her name, and basically it's just a story of warring factions going back and forth, battling for supremacy, all of that stuff. Not much of a story here, although I will say I did enjoy a lot of the cinematics, especially like the CGI work. The graphics at the time were really good, and I think they still hold up pretty well from a technical standpoint. In this, again, it's your standard Dynasty Warriors hack and slash game, but they dialed it up to 11 for what we had at the time. And the missions in this game are sometimes pretty long. Some of the missions can go for like 15 minutes or more, and so I was racking up 3,000 kills easily, on any given mission. Again, you got combos. You'll use your combos to defeat enemies. The enemies will drop red orbs. You'll use those red orbs to fill up your special meter. And then once your special meter is full, then you can unleash these crazy powerful attacks. And I think there's another bar, like a blue orb bar too, where you can unleash like some ultimate attacks. There's not a whole lot to say about it. It's got good graphics, decent sound. I will say I do like the art style. All of the characters in this game look really cool. They have some cool weapons, and they have some really cool armor that seems kind of inspired more by like Norse mythology. There's a lot of characters who kind of have like wings on their armor and things like that. And so honestly, they kind of remind me of like Dragoons from like the Legend of Dragoon series. Like the armor kind of reminds me of that. But anyway, all in all, this was a pretty interesting game. And like I said, it wasn't like one of the best games I ever played. But if you like those Dynasty Warrior style hack and slash games, again, this kind of gives its own flavor and flair to that genre. This game also had a sequel. Both can be had for fairly cheap. So if you see 99 Nights, definitely grab it. Okay, so this next game is kind of interesting. This is a fighting game brought to us by the good folks at SNK and published by Xseed here in America. I've got Samurai Showdown Sin. I've talked about this one before in the past as well. And this is a fighting game in the Samurai Showdown series, most notable for being 3D. So using 3D polygons in this, and most of the Samurai Showdown games are 2D side-scrolling games. This one got a ton of hate when it came out, and while I like the game, I can definitely see why it got a lot of hate. It's definitely not my favorite in the series. It is kind of on the bottom tier, but I like the Samurai Showdown series in general, so, I was cool with it. It's, storyline-wise, I don't really play fighting games for their storyline, but basically there's some big bad general who's trying to build an army to take over all of Europe. Every character kind of has their reasons and motivations for being there, but you won't really care about that. Like I said, it's a fighting game first and foremost, and the fighting mechanics is one of the things that I found kind of weird about the game. Me personally, I feel like they just changed too much at the end of the day. One of the big things about the fighting system in it is it's not very balanced with some characters. One of the major things that they did was remove a lot of the projectile attacks that the characters could do. So characters like Ho'omaru and his kind of whirlwind attack, you can't do that at all. Like, they replaced a lot of their projectile attacks with these short kind of like melee like kind of like thrust attacks, and that wouldn't be that big a deal, except there is one character, Draco I think is his name is, he's like a cowboy who uses a shotgun, and so he has projectile attacks so he can basically just kind of spam throughout the fight. If you can't close the distance on him safely, then I mean he'll rip you to shreds. And it's just like I said, it's just not balanced very well. One of the things about the combat system that I do like is they kind of got these like block and parry moves where you can do these kind of like devastating slashes a la games like the Bushido Blade series. And so you can dice a foe up in mere seconds by, using this technique once you get really good at it. And I thought that was pretty cool. The game itself is also gory, just like the previous games in the series. So once you land the final blow, you'll get this kind of cool death animation with your enemy like slowly bleeding out as they hit the ground. And so I like that. The graphics in this game though are not very good. Polygons and textures look pretty low res. This looks like a GameCube game to me. I don't know why. Like it looks like on par with like GameCube games of the time, like I don't know, like Bloody Roar and some of the other like 3D fighting games, Soul Calibur. But honestly, I think Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube looks better than this game. It's definitely much sharper. Again, you got kind of bland, fuzzy textures in this, muted colors. Some of the animations are kind of jerky. Again, overall, from a technical standpoint, this is not that great a game. It does have a decent roster of characters, though. You got like 24 characters. I think you got like 13 from the original, from previous games, and then they add something like 8 to 10 new characters, which is cool. But again, the characters that you may be familiar with, they just don't play quite the same as you may be familiar with. All in all, this isn't a super cheap game, or this isn't a super expensive game, rather. So if you are trying to snag up all the Samurai Showdown games, this is definitely worth adding to the collection. Again, it's not the best fighting game that I've ever played, but I think it had enough to warrant adding to the collection, especially at its current cheap price. Okay, penultimate game on the list. This is brought to us by Ubisoft, and this is actually one of my favorite games on the Xbox 360. We got Naruto Rise of a Ninja, and this is a fantastic kind of open world action RPG that takes place in the Naruto universe. It roughly, storyline wise, it roughly covers about the first 80 episodes, pretty much until you get to the Chunin exams. So it goes from the beginning of the story to the Chunin exams. In this, you can play as Naruto, of course, and you kind of just go on his initial journey to becoming a ninja. The Ninja Leaf Village has been recreated for this game, so you can zip all over the Ninja Leaf Village, from the ground to the rooftops and beyond. You can go into the forest and the rivers and all kinds of places beyond the Ninja Leaf Village as well. And so, like I said, I like the open world style of it. As you go through the game, at the beginning, everyone in the village hates you. So as you do tasks for people, you can kind of change their minds over time, and they'll give you items and power-ups and experience points that you can then use to improve your attributes so you can become a better fighter in the ring. Interesting thing about this game is once you get into a fight with an enemy, it kind of switches into kind of like a 2D fighting game at that point, and so you can bust out the moves. Jutsus are controlled by the analog stick, so you'll do analog stick combinations to bust out different jutsus. Again, this is a really good game, fantastic graphics and art style, and just one of my favorites on the series. Another thing about the exploration is over the course of the game, you'll get new moves like a wall run, a double jump, being able to grind on rails and things like that. And that's going to allow you to traverse more of Hidden Leaf Village. is as the game goes on. And so by the end of the game, you're pretty powerful and can bust out a ton of different ninja moves. All in all, this game is fantastic. I love Naruto Rise of a Ninja. It also has a sequel called The Broken Bond, which we may take a look at in a future episode. This game, of course, like all games on this list being exclusive, this one is actually starting to go up in price right now, though. So unlike the other games on this list, which are cheap, this one is already hovering at like 40 to 45 bucks. So it's a good idea to go ahead and grab this game ASAP. Definitely start looking for this one. It's going to be one of the more expensive games on the system as the years goes on. Okay, and the final game on this list today, brought to us by Maximum Games. This is a compilation of several games in its series. This is the Serious Sam collection, and I don't know much about the Serious Sam franchise. It's a first-person shooter, I believe, that started out on the PC back in the day. It kind of came out in that Doom era of shooters, and like I said, you play as a guy. He's fighting off this alien race from taking over the world. And like I said, it's a really wacky, tongue-in-cheek take on the first-person shooter genre. In this game, again, you play as Serious Sam. They've got several games on this disc here, including Serious Sam, the first encounter, Serious Sam, the second encounter, Serious Sam 3, BFE, Serious Sam, Jewel of the Nile, and then a Serious Sam Double D, Double XL, which I think is like a side-scrolling game. The other games in the series, again, have been completely remastered. So textures and graphics and everything mostly on par with what we were seeing now, especially Serious Sam 3. That game looks really good. Definitely looks like a current the current then generation Xbox 360 game. And like I said, if you want to talk about like value and bang for the buck, this is absolutely fantastic. Again, a lot of the Serious Sam games came out on PC, so it's not like you can really just go out and run and buy the disc anymore. And so it's nice to have them here in this physical collection. Again, all remastered. So this game right now, I think is going for like 25 bucks. This also, I think, will be one of the more expensive games in the Xbox 360 collection as time goes on, because I almost never see it. I picked it up cheap back in the day, but now whenever I do see it, I see it for about 30 bucks. Again, going back to the gameplay, it's more of like your old school arcade style first person shooter. So there's no aiming down the sights and most games don't have vampire health. It's health pickups and things like that. So it plays kind of a lot like Halo for me, like the early Halo games with the more combat-y style and the less kind of like auto aim down the sights, Call of Duty, first person shooters that we've been accustomed to for the last several years. And it's kind of a refreshing thing. Again, a lot of humor in the enemies and the blood and the gore, and Serious Sam has a bunch of crazy one-liners. It's just all in all a good game. And again, even for the 25 to 35 that it's going for now, to have 4 or 5 separate games on this disc and having the first 3 Serious Sam games remastered for the Xbox 360, that's a heck of a steal. And if you're a fan of the series, this is a no-brainer buy. If you see Serious Sam, definitely grab it. Again, I do believe it's going to be one of the more expensive games on the system in the future. Alright guys, I do believe that's all I got for you, but let's talk about it in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What are some more Xbox 360 exclusives that we can talk about? Because I just scratched the surface. Again, when it comes to the difference between the 360 and the Xbox One, the Xbox One is pale in comparison on its exclusives when you put it side by side with the Xbox 360. So I can make several more videos, and I've got, looking on my shelf, I got several more exclusive games for the Xbox 360 that we can dive into. But if you guys like this content, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.